Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Manolis, do you want to take the floor?
Yeah, thanks, Irene. Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Manolis Karambinis. I'm a research associate at Center for Research and Technology in LAS and the project coordinator of the AgroBioHeat project. I would like to welcome everybody in this very interesting meeting. I think we had a very nice registration turnover, about 300 people, and I see more and more people are joining in by the minute. So thanks, everybody, for your interest. And I will start by saying a few things. Can you move the slide, Erin? Okay, so today's event is about greening energy in rural areas with valorization of agricultural residues. We have assembled, I think, a very nice panel of speakers and a gender-balanced panel as well, I have to say. And we will have a very fruitful, I guess, discussion, and we look forward also to interactions with the audience, to a series of live polls, as well as your questions. A few things about housekeeping. I guess most of you are quite familiar with how Zoom works. If you want to ask a question to one of the panelists, you can use the Q&A section in Zoom. If you have any other comment or general remark, you can use the chat function of Zoom. Next slide. So today's event is organized by AgroBioHeat project together with Bioenergy Europe. I will say a few things about AgroBioHeat first. AgroBioHeat is a project funded by the Horizon 2020, and it has the overall aim of supporting the European rural decarbonization through promoting modern and market-ready agrobiomass heating solutions. The project has a consortium of 13 partners. It includes a mixture of technical organizations, technical partners like my own, several what we call multiplication partners, which can be bioenergy associations or agricultural or any other renewable energy organization in the countries you see with a light green color, as well as a few other partners which complement the consortium's expertise with different skills. I don't have the time to go into a lot of detail, but I do suggest that if you are interested to visit our social media or our website for more information. Next slide. So
Yes,
maybe you want to take that one.
Yeah, I can jump quickly in, Manolis. Thank you. My name is Irene Di Padua, and I'm policy officer at Bioenergy Europe. We represent the European bioenergy industry, and we are the voice of the sector. We are active at European and national level. And as you can see in the slide, we have more than 170 members active through the full value chain. But enough from my side. If you want to know more, please feel free to reach out to me or my colleagues. Maybe, Manolis, we can go ahead with the main discussion for today.
So I would just like to say a few things to frame the general setting for today and why we are doing an event about agricultural residues in Europe. Here we have two basic, I would say, pieces of information that I would like to pass on as a first message. The first is that we have a very big potential of agro residues in Europe. There are several studies that have desk studies that have focused on the agrobiomass potential in Europe, and the quantities that they find is significant in all cases. The mixture of what is available in every country, of course, changes. We have, for example, more prunings in the south, straw is everywhere, and there are other resources lying all around Europe. And that's something that everybody agrees, as well as the fact that in the future, more and more agrobiomass will have to be used in the energy mixture. On the other hand, we have the current reality, the current practice, which is the fact that agrobiomass is not properly used. We still have, I'm afraid to say, open field burning in several parts of Europe, especially again in the south, which is a totally waste of a valuable resource, as well as contributing to seasonal pollution. Next slide. That being said, another message I would like to pass briefly before giving the floor to the speakers is that we know that it's possible to use agricultural residues for energy. It's not science fiction. It's not something for the very well, for the near or the more distant future. And there are several cases in Europe that highlight how this can be done. We have, for example, the Danish example, where straw is contributing significantly, around 10% of the total renewable energy production. We have in many countries local original markets for agro-industrial residues, things that don't have the same nice fuel properties like the woody biomass most people are familiar with, but still are being used in many applications. And we have also, but these are not usually very well visualized, some local champions, pioneers that have started mobilizing what is locally available and then make a value out of that. So that's the general framework, and I think that with that we can proceed.
Yes, I think we can go on with the first live poll for today's Manolis. In the meantime, I see we have reached more than 100 attendees on the line, so that really shows the interest for this topic. So if we can go to the first poll, you should be able to see it now. So in your opinion, what is the most critical intervention required to unlock the potential of agrobiomass, since we're going towards the carbon neutrality target by 2050? Do we need new policies? Do we need more dedicated financial support? Or is still an issue of awareness raising, so people are not aware of this topic? Or do you have any other suggestion, or you don't have any opinion on this? So I'm not seeing the results, but I think we can still wait a little bit more for people to just vote. We have 40% that voted so far, so maybe let's wait another 5-10 seconds, Manolis, and then I will ask my colleagues to show the results and you can quickly comment on it. Okay, I think we can close the poll now and share the results. Manolis, so
yeah.
What do you take from these results?
I would say that most of our participants have an opinion first, and it seems that a slight majority favors financial support as the most critical intervention, but I think it's equally matched with new policies. And slightly lower, we see also that awareness raising actions are needed as well.
Yeah, and I think that's very good, because stay tuned, we will have a couple more questions afterwards, not now, because now I would like to give the floor to the next speaker. So Manolis, if you want to shortly introduce him, perhaps.
Yeah, so our first speaker is Mr. Olaf Nering, if I'm saying his name correctly. Mr. Nering graduated with a combined degree in Business Administration and Industrial Engineering from Nord Academy, Hamburg, Germany. He joined Amandus Cal Sales Division in 1996 and has been active in various positions and industries. Currently, Mr. Nering is Amandus Cal Senior Area Manager in charge for Asia, Pacific, Middle East, and Africa. He is well experienced with complete plants and single machinery for wood and biomass pelletizing, and is also well knowledge with regional raw materials such as rubber wood, acacia, eucalyptus, empty fruit branches, oil palm fronds, bagasse, rice husks, straws, and I guess any kind of agrobiomass. So, Olaf, without further ado, I would like to give the floor to you and hear your perspective.
Yes, Olaf, do you want to share the screen, perhaps?
Yes, I will do. One moment.
That's great.
I think it should be on your screen now.
Perfect.
Okay, Mr. Karampinis, thank you very much for the nice introduction and for introducing myself here. A warm welcome here from Hamburg, from Rheinbeck in northern Germany. And the topic of my presentation here is converting agricultural residues into pellets. And this is a valuable commodity for low emission heat and power generation already today, and we hope much more in the future. Okay, Amandus Cal is a member of Bioenergy Europe. And here I'd like to thank my co-author, Dr. Werner Sitzmann, a colleague here in Amandus Cal, and he is a Bioenergy Europe board member. So Amandus Cal, the company I work for, is based in Rheinbeck in northern Germany, close to Hamburg. And here you can see on the slide the facilities, and we make plants and equipment, and we are made in Germany. So here at Rheinbeck, at the place, we do the engineering, we do the production, we do the R&D for our plants and equipment that we supply. The main industries that we handle today are animal feed, then alternative fuels. This is biomass and wood pelleting, recycling, human food, pharmaceutical, chemical, fertilizer. So we are very much diversified into many industries. And today the Carl Group has more than 900 employees, and the export, as typical for this industry here, we have an export rate of about 80%. So to start this presentation and going into the details here of this biomass pelleting production, I'd like to share this screen with you, where you can see the evolution of the global pellet production in the last 20 years. So this slide has been originally published in Bioenergy Europe in the pellets report in 2020. And so we can see here that the industry started rather small with just 2 million tons in the year 2000. And today, now 2019, we see almost 40 million tons. And now in the year 2021, we should have reached up to 45 million tons already. And interesting is here that EU 28 produces today almost 20 million tons. So almost half of the market production is produced by the EU 28 countries. Another contributor is the remaining Europe. And then we go to North America, a fast-growing supplier of pellets for the international markets. And when we see now in the recent years, also we see the strong development in Asia Pacific. Well, the green color here is Asia Pacific. This is mainly Vietnam. Sorry, I have some itchy in my ear. We have a very strong and dynamic development in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Southeast Asia in general. So, and that's, I think it's very interesting. What we also see in the future, I think Africa will also become a player here. And yeah, but we also have to look, of course, into other developments here in the market, not only by size and volumes. It is also what has happened actually. So, and now this is basically the same slide with a few comments added here. So when we started in 2000, the main raw material was dry wood, sawmill, byproducts, and produced for household pellets, mainly of spruce, pine, and large coniferous trees here in Europe. And that was really for the household pellet market. And that continued for some time. And then in the year 2007, also already agricultural byproducts like straws, short rotation plantations were added to the biomass pelleting portfolio. So, and in the year 2010, co-firing started. So substituting a share of the coal being burned by biomass, by wood pellets. So since then we have this industrial pellet. And here we also see that the household market didn't show the dynamic anymore at that time. So after 2010, the main dynamic came from the industry, from the power plants. So and then we saw other developments, and then the technical development started more and more to become important here. So we saw torrefaction, we saw the founding of the IBTC, the International Biomass Torrefaction Council. We saw steam explosion coming into the market, more on an R&D level at that time. Then we saw suddenly requirements from the industry like smell, when we burn the pellets, that we don't generate a smell. That's not appreciated by the people living next door to or in the area of the power plants. Off-gassing, self-ignition. Also, this has to be prevented that pellets self-ignite by themselves and cause fire. And then in the recent times, we saw also low moisture white pellets, and high energy black pellets. So these are pure technical developments now demanded and requested by the power plants, to be more efficient, to have more energy density, and to have a higher efficiency in burning this. And here we see that the main players producing these plants for pellet, they come all from the EU 28. So like Armando Scarlett from Germany, we see that players come from Spain, France, Netherlands, Italy, Denmark. And these companies are the market leaders here in this industry. Of course, we have global competition today, players from China mainly there, but they handle more other markets on this wood and biomass pelleting sector. The high quality processes are mainly handled by EU 28 machine and equipment supplier, and that's really very successfully. So now, from the field to pellets, converting residues into fuel. So Mr. Karampinis showed you also situations from the southern European countries. Now here you can see something from the northern European country. Yeah, that's a field next door to my parents' house, and we see it with the crops. And then afterwards, during the harvesting, when the cereals are harvested, the straw is baled directly on the field. So, and these bales can be now brought to a plant and being pelletized there. So on the right-hand side in this glass, you can see pellets. So the black pellets on top means there's another process that's called torrefaction or steam explosion to increase the values further, but this all has to be pelletized. And now, I think we should see one difference here, for example, compared to solar power or wind power. When we have a solar power, we have only the sun as the energy source. So the beams from the sun go into the panel and are transformed into electricity. And in the wind turbine, the wind rotates the blades and the generator generates the power then. So, but these are only driven by a single source, the wind or the sun. So now when we go into these agriculture residues, we see a huge variety of raw materials. And these different raw materials have different properties, different particle sizes, different moisture contents, different appearance at all. So, and here the biggest difference to solar or to wind is we have to take care that we have the proper technology and the proper processes to handle these raw materials and to convert this into the pellet. So this means we need a strong mechanical design of the plant, and we need a strong and good process technology to process them. So this is not so much mass production, that's a lot of tailor-made processes for the individual plant solutions. We see smaller plants, 2-3 tons per hour. We see medium-sized plants, 10 tons per hour, 12 tons, 15 tons. And we see big plants, 50 tons per hour. So, and these require adapted process technology. And I would like to come back to where the EU 28 machine and plant makers are very strong. We are strong with our own production, with our own R&D here in the market. So we have the experience, we have the production facilities to produce these plant technologies at the levels required. And the tendency goes more and more to high efficient biomass pelleting plants. So this is well supported also by the institutes here in the European Union, who are, by the way, also the global leaders here in this research and development support for the industry. So, value adding of agriculture residues into pellets is beneficial for. So this is now more a lot of our own opinion here. I think in the upcoming discussion you will discuss many more aspects here of this. So for the environment, we see it, of course, when we convert agriculture residues into a fuel, it lowers CO2 emission, as these CO2 emitting residues are converting into a commodity used for fuel. So when we burn them, we use the CO2 for generating power or heat. Otherwise, when it's on the field, got rotten or burned on the field, the CO2 is emitted without any benefit. So what does it mean for rural areas? It creates additional income for the farmers and for the region. Okay, that's only money now, no? But it generates jobs. The operation of plants requires trained operators and maintenance technicians. So these are highly qualified jobs. Plus, other jobs are needed in the commercial sector, bookkeeping, sales, procurement, to get the spare and wear parts. So this is all requiring qualified jobs. And I think that's very interesting for rural areas today in many places, not only in Europe, but also in other places in the world. So hence it can be a measure against the exodus of people from the countryside. And if we do more on the countryside, it increases the economic efficiency of infrastructure, either available or planned for the future. And finally, as our own interest here of a plant and equipment maker, it secures industry jobs in Europe. And I think that's also a very good aspect of this industry here of pelleting agriculture residues. So I'd like to thank you for your attention now, and I wish all of you a successful conference here and very interesting talks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olaf, for this very interesting presentation and for framing the context. We have, I think, a couple of questions in the chat for you, so I think we have a little time to address them now, if it's fine with you.
Yes.
So one, I think, is a little more general. How much energy is commonly used to produce pellets? I know it varies a lot depending on the feedstock, but if you can give some kind of order of magnitude.
Yeah, the easiest is, of course, if you have already a dry raw material in the proper particle size, then you have maybe 40 to 50 kilowatt hours per ton that you have to spend to make the pellet, to make a hard pellet that can be transported and is well accepted by the power plants, for example, who, by the way, look also for these agriculture residues as a lower cost alternative compared to the wood residues or wood pellets they burn. So when we go higher then and we consider some grinding, then it can go 20, 30 kilowatt hours higher.
We have another question. It has to do with, I guess, more the safety aspects of handling agricultural residues. I think the safety aspects of wood handling are now well understood and generally taken care of by the pellet industry. But how much do we know about, for example, dust generation where grinding straw bales?
Yeah, of course, a dry material can generate dust when it's mechanically treated. So not only in the grinding, also in the intake, and also in, for example, when pellets are brought, that's to the final user side. It was very important that we have a good pellet quality, that most of the really arrives as a pellet there, and that we minimize the dust. So at the pellet, we want to have maybe only 1 or 2% dust generation, but that doesn't mean that this dust goes into the ambient. The most of it remains there. But now to the process, we have to look where we have also additionally a lot of air movement. Dust is generated in the mechanical treatment, but as long as there's no air movement, the dust basically doesn't go to the environment. So that means for conveyors, for this, we can use spot filters to take out these dust directly at the site produced. When we talk about hammer mills, grinding system, we have, of course, filter systems for the air there, with which we fulfill all the requirements here applicable in the European Union or in other places in the world.
Thank you. We have another, again, a little more technical question, but I guess you're the right person for that again. What happens with erosion of the machinery when you're grinding or pelletizing agricultural residues, especially those that have a higher mineral or silicon content? Is that something that requires, for example, different equipment, different alloys to be used?
Yeah, anyway, we use a tool steel for the wear parts in the processing zones. So, and in certain processing zones, these tool steels are also hardened. So, and of course, we have to look into these characteristics. Now we have raw materials with 5% ash content, and when we now talk about a rice husk or rice straw, then we have 15% ash content. So, but there are also different tool steel qualities here that we can operate within the, for example, when we pelletize the material in the die plate, we can work with different chromium and carbon contents in the alloy and adapt this and improve this. But compared to the wood, we have to take care in the agriculture residues. Basically, there is more abrasive substance within.
Okay, I have an interesting market-related question from our colleague Zils. He considers that the agro-pellets demand seems to be connected with the wood pellet market availability. So when there is an unavailability of wood pellets, there is a growing interest in agro-pellets. And vice versa, I guess. So do you also share this view? And if yes, how to change this and create, let's say, stable markets for agro-pellet residues?
I think in my opinion, I don't see this relation that much here, that there is this, when there's a lack of wood pellet, that people go for agriculture pellets. That may be in some rural areas the case. But now when I see the big power plants, what I know is they want to substitute by intention the high cost wood pellets with agriculture residues. But in the range, they want to dilute as long as they still meet the requirements of the emission of their power plants afterwards. Now we have to look also, when we talk about agriculture residues, into a different melting of ashes inside. So this also has to be overcome there, or has to be considered here, that you cannot simply replace now one-to-one wood pellets when you have a dedicated process with agriculture residues. So this has to be well monitored, and the power plant people, they know how to understand and how to operate this.
And maybe one final question. I know, again, it's a little general, but can you give some order of magnitude figures about investment costs required for new agro-pellet plants and possibly payback times? I know it's general, but
that's very general. I know this question I hear many times. And look, I think we all start with a small pelleting plant, and a small pelleting plant you may install for a few €100,000. But when we now go bigger and bigger, and we have to consider that with the size of the plants, also the requirements for infrastructure, for pellet storage, for raw material handling, they will all increase. And then you talk about several million euros.
So I guess that from that I understand that it's feasible to have a small pellet mill in rural areas that handles small volumes, technically feasible, I guess. And if the business model works, it's fine.
For sure. Mr. Karapinus, please look. We have here in Germany, when we take now the well-working household pellet market from wood, we see that we have smaller plant capacities here in Europe to serve the local household pellet markets. Well, and so because the logistic is easier to handle, you have your customers nearby. So you can produce pellets here in Europe, and you can bring them to the customers within a certain range of 100, 200 kilometers. And this works well. And I think this works well also for agriculture residues when there is the market available there. Well, so, and on the other hand, we see now the big volumes coming from North America, and these comes from high capacity industrial wood pelleting plants. And they make their advantage by the overall lower production costs they have at site, and then they bring them here to the power plants directly. So we see different market segments here. We see consumers, private consumers, who may buy more locally, and we have the big power plants who may buy more internationally. But we also see white pellets coming here or pellets here from Europe going to power plants as well. It doesn't need to come from South America or from North America. It can be also produced here.
Perfect. So I think that we have kept you enough for more, and I think we have to move on, I guess, Irene. So there are a couple of more questions, but maybe we can take them up separately in a written form or by contacting you, Olaf, directly.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Perfect. So thanks again.
Thank you, Mr. Karampinas. Thank you very much. And
thank you, Olaf, and thank you, Manolis, for moderating this very interesting discussion. I see that we had a lot of questions. We are also a little bit behind time, but I think it was worth it considering the interesting results. But now I would like to dig into our panel discussion. And before doing it, I will quickly introduce our distinguished speakers. So today with us, we have Jérôme Maillet, which is export area manager at COMPTE. We have Barbara Portzva, sales director at ASCET. Michal Wolf, which is Research Program Officer at European Commission, in particular in Directorate for Agriculture. We have Tajana Radic, which is Head of Agricultural Policy at the Croatian Chamber of Agriculture. And last but definitely not least, we have Daniel Garcia, responsible of promotion and innovation at AVEBIOM, which is the Spanish Biomass Association. So I would ask all the speakers to turn on their camera. And before digging into our panel discussion, I think we're ready for our second poll of the day. So I would like the audience to ask the following question. Which policy support scheme would foster the new value chains for biomass residues? And I think we can see the poll now. Yes. So which are the policy support needed? And you have multiple options, so you can choose several of them. You can also choose other, and please complement perhaps your answer in the chat box. So we have mandatory sub-targets for agricultural residues and agrobiomass to be included in the NECPs, the National Energy and Climate Plans. We have dedicated eco schemes for agrobiomass valorization. We have a stricter enforcement for open field burning ban. And we have also the prioritization of agrobiomass in rural development, or any other measures that can come to your mind. And this is our first question, but then we also have a second one, which is what type of financial support would be most effective to foster new agrobiomass value chains? And this comes also a bit from the answer to the very first poll, which we're focusing more on policy support and financial support. So if we look at the option for the second question, we have the investment support for producers or for end users, but we also have operational support for both producers and end users. Or another one can also be a carbon tax on fossil fuels. Or as I mentioned before, if you had any other suggestion, please feel free to type it in the chat box. I think some people are answering. It's still 30 something percent. So I think, Manolis, we can leave another 10 seconds or something for people to decide. I know it's a tough choice on this question, but don't be shy. And I think, Manolis, we are ready to close the poll soon. So maybe we can close it and see the results.
Mm-hmm.
Just 1 second for the results. Here they come. So Manolis, please, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, I see for the first question, the policy support scheme, that the majority of the votes goes to setting mandatory sub-targets for agrobiomass in the national energy and climate plans. And I think that kind of makes sense, because if you have a specific sub-target that you have to meet, then it might put into motion the different wheels in both the policy and the market mechanism of each member state. I do also see that there is a very nice percentage of voters that have voted for the eco schemes. I think we will come back to this issue in the panel discussion, as well as the prioritization of agrobiomass in rural development measures. And I think that's also a message we would like to pass today. And there are some people who also vote for stricter enforcement of the open field burning ban. And maybe here I should make a small clarification, because I saw this question in the chat. In principle, burning of arable stubbles is forbidden in Europe, but we see still happening from time to time. There is a more gray area when it comes to the prunings, and the practice is, I would say, tolerated, at least for now. So I hope this clarifies a bit where we stand legally at the moment. And now for the second question about the financial support, I see again that the majority votes for investment support for producers. This means, I guess, farmers, so new harvesters, storage processing facilities, I hope this means that many people who have joined us today have a connection with the agricultural sector as well. I see also that a very nice percentage vote for the option of having a carbon tax for fossil fuel. I think it makes sense because this creates favorable market conditions for any kind of renewable energy project as well as biomass. And the other, I would say, major questions, major responses have to do with the operational support for producers. Things like, for example, subsidy for every ton of biomass mobilized, or investment support for the end users, for example, having new boiler installations. And with that, I won't take up any more of the panel's time, and I will leave the floor to our guests, I guess.
Yes. Thank you, Manolis. And I see in the chat box, someone is also raising some typical issue of agrobiomass, like slugging and fouling. And I think that one of our speakers, or more of them, will tackle this during the discussion. So now, without further ado, I would like to ask Jerome to take the floor. And Jerome is indeed expert area manager of COMPTE. COMPTE is one of the leading companies in the agrobiomass sector. And Jerome, you're also quite a cross-disciplinary person, if you want to put it in this way, because you have a depth expertise in biomass, of course, and agricultural biomass, but you also have a background in business development and overall in project management. So please, Jerome, which are the main obstacles that are hindering an optimal use of agricultural biomass?
Thank you for the introduction. I'm very pleased to be with you today and to have the possibility to share with you COMPTE experiences, technical knowledge, good practices, and lessons learned. COMPTE is a 130-year-old company based in France. We have been working many years in the wood industry, agri-food, energy-intensive industries, and district heating for the use of hot water, steam, separated water, and hot gas generators. Concerning our topic today, yes, of course, the main obstacles using agricultural residues are first for us the standardization. We spoke about that a bit earlier in the presentation. To get an homogeneous quality and supply of these materials, of course. The second point we can see is also the availability over the year in the feedstocks. Of course, as a boiler manufacturer, we often have to cope depending on the different business models we have with our clients, but we are most of the time to be able to cope with several types of fuels, at least two, let's say. Most of the time there is one type of agricultural residue, and it's always good to have an alternative, let's say, a woody-based alternative like pellets or wood chip, for example, that are not so far in terms of characteristics, let's say, from the first one. That's why I'm in line with the presentation done by Olaf from Carl earlier. Ideal situation is, of course, to have a standard fuel, but it's not always the case. And we face these topics every day at COMPTE. The technical aspects are, of course, one of the obstacles or the point to deal with. Every type of agricultural residue is different and need to be considered specifically. There is no, let's say, fixed-to-all boiler and handling system solution to cope with these residues. So we work on the design of the system themselves, from storage to transfer, combustion, ash extraction, emissions, etc. We'll speak, I think, later in the discussion also about the emissions. Comparing, let's say, to woody biomass, we have more complex, let's say, commissioning and training of the end users. We have a longer setup period after this commissioning. You know, in the operation, in the follow-up, it usually takes several months to get stabilized operation of the systems. That is why, for example, we often see contracts that are designed to transfer the operation of the boilers after 1 year, after the commissioning, from the initial technical contractor or ESCO companies to the final, let's say, operating company for the next 15 years afterwards. So mainly that's the points we see today as the main obstacles. And then in the next discussion, we'll be checking the challenging term about emission and the warranty on our biomass system.
Thank you, Jerome, and thank you also for being a very active member of Bioenergy Europe. It's great to have you here today. But we will look into the challenges indeed more in detail later. Now I would like to ask Barbara from Asket to join us. So Asket is quite a particular case, Barbara, because it's a family company, but you're quite active in the international market, and you're also quite one of the pioneers in the Polish market. And in particular, you, Barbara, you have a background as an automation engineer, but you're also active and an expert in the international context, because you've participated in several of the UN conferences for climate change, in particular the COP14 and 23. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to tell us about obstacles in this field. Please, Barbara, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Ren, for the nice presentation, for the nice introduction, and I would like to welcome everyone from Poland. Yes, that's true that we have been pioneers, and that's why I put just in a short list what are the most common obstacles that we face all over the world. So as it has been seen that the stereotypes that straw can give energy, this is what we faced especially in the beginning, that people didn't believe that there is energy in straw that can be used for their purposes. Next thing is a practice or custom to burn the straw in the fields that it has been mentioned already. So I can see that is facing very many countries. Then the lack of awareness that the AgroBiomass can be transformed into fuel, and the lack of knowledge how it shall be combusted, what Jerome told us about already. Then we also face that customers say that they believe that the biomass processing technology has to be expensive, and that single farmer cannot afford for that. So that's why the reply for this kind of issues were the construction of very simple machine that we have in our portfolio. I will tell more later about it. And the next thing is the lack of promotion of EU ETV program. So it's Environmental Technology Verification Program that was launched in 2014, and our technology was the first that was verified. And till today, we cannot see any supports or any help for the verified technologies that right now, if I'm not mistaken, is already 400. So these are the most, I would say, important issues from our side.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Indeed, very interesting points. I'm sure we will get to discuss more in detail some of them later during our chat. But now I would like to ask Michal from DG AGRI to join us and take the floor, because Michal, well, he joined the Commission in 2019 and is currently in charge of the deployment and implementation of the bioeconomy and forestry strategy. But before that, Michal was also quite engaged at national level, because if I'm not wrong, you were taking several roles in the Austrian Ministry for Agriculture, and you were also part of the Austrian Perm-Rep here in Brussels. So Michal, please, the floor is yours for a more European perspective.
Yes, good morning, and thank you for this very nice introduction. Let me maybe start with very briefly with the political context. I think we are all very aware that global challenges such as climate change or the increasing risk of ecosystem degradation force us to seek new ways of producing and consuming resources. And I mean, ultimately, we have to move away from this strong dependency on fossil resources towards renewable ones, while, of course, also respecting our planetary boundaries. And as it has been mentioned already before by the speakers, there are untapped biomass sources available which do not compete with food production or make any additional use of land necessary. So we believe that developing value chains based on the valorization of residues, byproducts, and waste help to protect the environment and the climate, of course, but also to create new jobs for farmers and rural areas. So to come to your question, we see that many regions want to really utilize to unlock the potential. but there are indeed some challenges. I will focus on 3 challenges, and mainly from a research and innovation perspective. So the regional dimension is absolutely key to unleash the potential. The territorial approaches, which build on local resources and needs, avoid capital outflow and add value to the regional economy, which will be a key success factor. And we see that regions which develop, for example, a bioeconomy strategy or establish a forum for regular exchange are more successful. This means we need a plan. Indeed, it can help to engage with stakeholders to understand and exploit the potential in the regional context, and also to facilitate the access to available funds. So we think we need locally rooted value chains, but within a global strategic framework, of course. Then, second, developing value chains in which primary producers are fully and effectively integrated is an important precondition. And this will also require new forms of cooperation. But only through this we will achieve our objectives to create more skillful jobs and also innovative know-how at the level of primary production. And this will unleash investments and spur innovation. Finally, I just want to mention the environmental sustainability, because I think this is clear that Europe reorient its economy towards climate neutrality and sustainability. This will also stimulate the demand for sustainable biological feedstock. But this also means that we have to take into account possible impacts of deviating biomass streams, for example, in terms of soil fertility or biodiversity in future. And I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. Indeed, it was an interesting point on sustainability and also soil fertility. I think some other speaker will also touch upon this, and we will have indeed more time to address later some of the topics that you briefly mentioned. And I also see that in the meantime, in the Q&A box, the questions are already coming in quite at full speed, but we will address them later. Now I would ask Tayana to take the floor. Tayana, you also have quite an impressive experience of more than 10 years in the agricultural and rural development sector. You are an active member of several networks in this field, and you're also engaged in the promotion of rural development indeed, and in several European founded projects, like just to name a few, Uprunning and CAP for Us. So Tayana, in your view, which are the obstacles to deploy the full potential of this sector?
Thank you very much, Irene. Thank you all, and thank you organizers for this really good event. We did a project of running, and what we saw was the need for the information and education on agricultural residues and potential. We also see that cooperatives and producer organizations are key to increase agro-residues use due to their logistic and organizational possibilities. Also, an important part of the agro-residues could go for modern heating in rural communities, such as farms, households, public buildings, districts, but it is needed to work to exchange of best practices. This is what we saw during our project. And as well, there is a need for education of advisory services, local communities, and consultants plus managers. So, but we also saw at the policy level, since the agrarian sector and energy policies are touching, there is also need for stronger coordination among both. This is something what we noticed during our project. Also, we see that advancing cooperation of agricultural residues use could strengthen development at local scale and contribute to GG balance. We see this multifunctionality role, such as new job creation, allows income diversification, improves energy security, contribution to circular economy, and to reduce changes of land abandonment. We also see that it can support leverage of rural development. This is also highly important, and reduce immigration from these areas if we add value farm work. We see a lot of business models, but also we see that there is a need, as we also noticed during this part of questionnaire, financial and organizational support schemes. There is a difference between parts of Europe. Somewhere the average of farms are 5 hectares, somewhere 15, somewhere 50. But different pilot models could be used, and this organizational scheme could help farmers to organize better, such as local community, and also clearly targeted financial schemes that could support, such as change of energy, farm boilers, rural stores, or some kind of storages, and that's it. I think this is crucial for farmers and technology. Sorry. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Diana. Indeed, different inputs, different benefits also of promoting agricultural biomass mobilization, and also for the deployment and development of rural communities. I think our next speakers will also be quite interested in these topics. So without further ado, I would like to ask Daniel to take the floor. So Daniel, you are part of AVEBIOM, which is the Spanish Biomass Association, and you've been in the field for, I think almost 20 years or something. So that also shows your in-depth knowledge of the sector. And you're also the man behind different European projects, among which AgroBioHeat, which is part of today's organizers, Up Running, as we mentioned it before, where Diana was also involved, but also many other more. So please, Daniel, your views on the obstacles on this against this sector.
Good. If we have to go to 3 barriers, it is difficult. We have been pushing agrobiomass at AVEBIOM, and previously also in my career for long years. So it helps to have a wide scope. But if I have to select something like 3, I have put like this. First, the utilization of agrobiomass is a little bit more complex than regular wood pellets or wood chips. AgroBiomass has good energy content and other characteristics, but handling, mobilization, and use can be a little bit different and sometimes more difficult. That creates that the equipment, the investment is a little bit higher sometimes as well. And this is especially relevant in small, medium-scale applications, which usually happen in rural areas, in local value chains. If you put that together with the fact that for some agrobiomasses there is no established uses, then it happens that there is no previous experiences, and the people pushing feels like they are the first, they have the risks, and they don't have, they have to invest a lot. This is one issue. Second, willingness to mobilize, because farmers and also agri-industries, they already are doing a management of the residues year after year. More easy, more economic, they choose the way, or more sustainable. But the issue is that if we want to make a value chain downstream, there is a demand on quality and on other issues. So we have to match the timings and to match to understand each part, so that the value chain, whenever it is implemented, it corresponds to the needs of the farmers and agri-industries, but also to the needs of the value chain. Finally, there is, I think, a limited understanding that bioenergy is totally compatible with carbon capture and sustainable soil management. This is an important driving force in the last years, and of course, we must keep the soils with good in terms of soundness and sanity, And then soil biomass from agro residues can be used as input, but also can be an input for diseases or pests. And also there are other ways to create to improve the soil organic carbon, like the grass, the rotation of crops, adding manure or minimum tillage. So the issue is what I want to say is not a barrier, but can be a barrier if policymakers and decision makers and farmers don't totally understand that in some cases the bioenergy and bioeconomy use may be the best use for the agro residues, wherever in other cases can be the use as soil input.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And since you were the last one to take the floor, I think it would be fair to start with you now for another question. Because, I mean, if we look at international reports, the situation of rural areas is not the best, because according to the Joint Research Center of the Commission, the JRC, by 2030, we could have something like 20 million hectares of abandoned land in Europe, or anyway, land which is not fit for food production. And this is a risk that affects mostly Southern European countries. So I was wondering if you maybe can talk a little bit about which is the situation now in Spain between used agricultural biomass and unused one, or if you can give us some example on, for example, prunings or other type of agricultural biomass use. And finally, what is still needed in the context? Actually, it's 3 questions. It's not one, but the floor is yours, Daniel, please. Daniel, I think you're muted.
Sorry, sorry. So about the first question, yes, in Spain, we are using a lot of AgroBiomass currently. Principally, if you think Spain is producing a lot of, is like the first world producer of olive oil, third in wine, and also we are leaders in citrus and in almonds and other nuts. So we produce a lot of these agro residues, and let's say olive stones, almond shells, and firewood is already in good use. Let's say, especially in small medium applications. In industry applications, you can find olive cake and also dirty or not clean olive stone. Then about the second question, and also there are other important agro residues, like it can be the prunings from vineyards, olive and fruit tree plantations, or as straw. There is huge potential about unexploited, about 10 million in Spain, it's said, tons per year. And what we find is some small pioneers that are visionary heroes, local heroes, that follow their spirit and establish a local value chain in a small, medium scale, and then maybe even moving just 100 or few thousand tons, they make it possible also economically to be sustainable, but also because they make an architecture of local actors collaborating. This is difficult to promote. On the other side, what we have also for unused biomass is the case of ENSE, is a pulp and paper company also in the bioenergy sector. They have about 5-6 plants, and just in 3 years, they have changed because of sustainability issues from roundwood to other forestry and agricultural residues. And they are able to mobilize now currently about 300,000 tons per year of agrobiomass. Just because of the big demand, they are able, and the economy of scale they were able to do it. This is somehow the status. We are mobilizing in Spain around, I think, 1.5 million tons of agrobiomass for small and medium and large scale in total. And then about what is needed and which obstacles, that was the last question. For the already used biomass, what we need really more informed installers and users so that they use it appropriately. Okay, good practices in the use of agrobiomass. And secondly, for this biomass that is not currently well developed, that has still large potential but is unused, then I think we need to grow the demand, and we need policies and incentives in place to facilitate the readiness to mobilize.
Yeah, I think, Daniel, indeed, this is a quite good point, and I totally agree on the need to have informed installers and consumers, though. So it's the two things. So thank you so much for raising this. I would just like to make a comment to all the speakers, because I see we have quite some question in the Q&A box. So if you feel like one question is directed to you, or you want to give your opinion, you can also do it in written form in the Q&A box. But now I would like to go back to Jérôme. And before asking you a question, Jérôme, I would like to recall that this is a Green Week event, and the main focus for this edition is zero pollution. So biomass is quite under the spotlight, I have to say, when it comes to air quality and pollution. And I would like to know, since COMPTE is one of the, indeed, the biggest player in this market, what is most challenging in terms of emission for agrobiomass? And also, do you have any requirements for fuel quality to guarantee that they will have low emission? And Jérôme, just one other question, because I see that in the chat box, there is someone who asks that if you have any pre-testing for the feedstock. So if you can also address that, I think will be good. It's quite aligned with the rest of your questions.
Perfect, thank you. I will finish with the testing part. Thank you again. We'll now dig a bit in the techniques, let's say. I will try to be as clear as possible. So at COMPTE, we have a 3-point approach, let's say, speaking about already known residues or new residues for us, let's say. So this 3-point approach starts on the key characteristics of these residues themselves. So with our partners or clients, we commonly set up a specification that is okay for everybody, let's say. And then the second step of this approach is to check out the technical challenges we will face on that, and we finish, of course, with solutions that COMPTE provides. So I will focus a bit on several characteristics we can have. So of course, on this kind of residues, you have a gross calorific value and net calorific value itself. You have the physical shape of the residues themselves. The challenges on that is, of course, the density, the size, the dust content. We spoke about that, if it's sticky or not, strips, if it's in bales or briquette or pellets or not. And the solution we propose, COMPTE proposes on that is a specific handling system, debagging system if needed for straw, for example, adapted introduction system to cope with the difficult shapes. Then we see an important point is the moisture content. If it's not a standard residue, let's say, so the technical challenge is to manage a large range of systems in our portfolio with combustion chamber to cover a different type of MC and the potential low temperature we can have in the system to cope with corrosion or other, let's say, bad effect on the systems themselves. And we can play on the techniques again with gas recirculation, water-cooled rate to lower as much as possible the emission and the impact of the residues on the system themselves. Then the next point is the chemical composition of the residues themselves. So we check oxygen, sulfur. So I will be quick on this one, but if I just point out the nitrogen, which is one of the most challenging parts, it's for the NOx and the NO2 emissions. So for these challenges, COMPTE proposes solution in the design itself. We put intermediary combustion chamber, staging on the combustion. At least we can propose also selective non-catalytic reduction system, so-called SNCR, etc. We check the chloride, the potassium. So it's really a mix between all these parameters, and we see the challenges and we propose facing to them some solution. One of them is the ash content. So we have sometimes large quantities to handle for certain type of agrofuels. The solution is to have specific de-ash systems with reinforced steel or refractory stainless steel, etc. And the ash shrinkage temperature, start temperature is the last one, let's say. We need some very well-designed system with water-cooled walls to reduce as much as possible the temperature in the system. Of course, we have abrasiveness. Speaking about cereal, you have a lot of dust, so you could be in an ATEX environment, non-explosive environment, etc. And about your question, so of course we have good practices, and the first step we propose when we have a new project is to receive a couple of tons of the residues and to do early stage trials on our pilot plants we have in France, and we check out all the parameters and start the design on that with common trials with our clients.
Thank you, Jerome. That was indeed a tough set of questions. So thank you so much for being so direct and addressing them so clearly. I would like now to go back to Barbara. Since Barbara, we're the views from a national association. We're the view of a company active in the market, but ASCET is indeed a family business. So can you perhaps tell us a bit more about the best use for local bioenergy, and how can agrobiomass can also create an added value in the development of local communities and rural areas?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we in ASCET think that local bioenergy shall be based on the renewable sources that are accessible locally, the best in a range about 50 kilometers. And we in ASCET specialized in non-water biomass such as straw, hay and reed. And in our opinion, the best way to transform it into briquettes is biomass technology. And the final briquettes can be applied instead of coal or wood for heating and for living purposes, for energy production towards cogeneration. And this way we can create added value, increase energy safety, energy independence. We can reduce energy poverty that is still present in many countries. So this way we can support and assure development of local communities. Biomass technology that we have is simple technology. It's only a 3-step process without the use of water, without any binders, without drying. We apply raw material of moisture content between 10 and 30%, and that is pretty unique by world standards. And such a biomass we transform into 100% natural briquette. This agro-fuel, agro-briquettes shall be produced and used locally, so close to the place of the presence of the raw material. This way we avoid transporting either raw materials or straw, for example, and the final briquettes. This way we reduce carbon footprint and allow for decentralized energy production. And to answer such needs, we have in our portfolio of products biomass and mobile machine. This is a complete production line that is built on a trailer that can work directly in a production hall or even in the field close to the haystack. To answer the second question, a straw briquette's caloric value is between 15 and 17 megajoules per kilogram, so it's equal to dry wood. And I would like to underline that we heat our facilities for over 10 years with straw briquettes with very good effects. Finally, I would like to tell you that biomass is the first in Europe verified technology within environmental technology verification program. The machine is recyclable in 95% and produced in a factory powered by solar panels, heated by electricity, and the straw briquettes. So our aim is to minimize the environmental impact either of our presence here and of our production.
Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you for giving us this overview on the local aspect of agrobiomass. Yeah. And building on this, I would like to move on to the next panelist. But also, I think it was clear from the discussion we are having so far that agrobiomass is just one piece of the puzzle. I mean, there is a much broader context, which is the one of sustainable bioeconomy. And I would like Diana perhaps to comment on this, on how agricultural cooperatives and also stakeholders mobilization can fit into this bigger context, and which synergies do you see between agricultural biomass and better mobilization of residues and the overall bioeconomy sector? So Diana, difficult question, but please go ahead. Diana, you're muted.
I got it. Thank you so much. as I mentioned before in my previous presentation, we see cooperatives as a key, but we have to be aware that there is a difference between cooperatives in each member state. And as Daniel said in his presentation, it is really different to collect actually agrobiomass. And there is a hard, or I don't know, crucial need to support farmers first to connect. And one of the connections we saw in during our project is local market, how to connect local market. That means schools, institutions that could be, that could use agrobiomass to help and to support increase. When they see a market, they will organize and they will try to connect. And we also see lack of connections in logistic. And this is how to collect all these biomass and to put on the market. I think that during the next period, the investments in this part is really needed. The next thing what we saw is also certification of the biomass, the quality of biomass. There is a need for education for that. There is a need for right scopes for that, not to have more administrative burden, but to really help farmers to use that. And as I said before, we see agro-residues that is giving diversity to agriculture sector and to farmers, that they create value in rural areas. Croatia, as you know, has high level of immigration from rural areas. And we see this add value helping farmers and their income to increase. Cooperatives could help in that because they're connecting farmers together, giving some this add value. We also see contribution to new European green policies. And this is working together on local level and giving add value. That would be my message for the end. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. That's indeed a good point, and I think it's important to promote education, promote also differences between the several situations that we have in Europe, because as you said, it really depends on a state-by-state case. But now I would like to go back to Michael, because I mean, Michael, you're from the European Commission, so it should not come as a surprise to you, but I think the European context clearly recognized the potential of agricultural biomass. And so I see we have one question in the Q&A box, but I also have one, which is about, do you think that EU carbon farming policies will be a barrier to the enlarged use of agricultural residues? And also, how do you see, I mean, do you think that the post-2020 common agricultural policies will be an incentive to member states to tap into this potential? So can you tell us a bit more about this, and also maybe bring in the research and innovation role in this context?
Okay, thank you very much. A few questions to answer. I will start with the CAP maybe. So yes, indeed, the future CAP recognizes the opportunity for our rural areas and also, of course, primary producers really to deploy the bioeconomy in a more holistic and systemic manner. So with the new delivery model, which is proposed, member states really have an opportunity to design bioeconomy tailor-made and also more result-oriented interventions, and with more subsidiarity to adapt to local conditions. So member states will really have the flexibility to design those interventions based on their needs. But this is not the only message I want to give you in terms of the CAP. Most of you will know one important instrument. It's called ERP AGRI, the European Innovation Partnership. We will continue to provide a very much supporting framework for farmers to test and co-develop new practices, technologies for harnessing their full potential, and also to highlight well-working business cases from which others also can get inspired. I have just looked it up actually for this event today to give you an example. I mean, this is not related to straw or prunings, but for example, when it comes to the production of biogas. At least 30 operational groups across the EU work on concepts to better valorize those residue and waste streams. So just to give you a bit of a picture that really activities are ongoing. And of course, we will also strengthen the links between the CAP and Horizon Europe. So research and innovation plays already a significant role to improve the knowledge on new technologies and also new business models. We have projects which, for example, have identified and quantified residue streams for different agricultural settings and developed concepts to mobilize and to valorize the resources in the best way. I also want to mention the BBI-GU, the Bio-Based Industries Joint Undertaking, because the Commission has already invested over 800 million euro, mainly in demo and flagship projects to leverage additional investments on the market. And to give you one concrete example, the project Lignoflex is a commercial flagship plant in Romania that produces advanced bioethanol from straw. The Commission invests almost 25 million euro to promote innovation in the whole value chain, from material to successful market entry of the product. And now to your third question, whether the mobilization of residues will be influenced by carbon policies. I mean, it is clear that there is, with the Green Deal in general, and also with the future CAP, indeed, farmers will be incentivized to increase the carbon content of soils. This is also a very important measure, but I don't think this is necessarily a contradiction. I think what will be more important is to find really smart solutions to have a good balance of the nutrients which are taken away and which will be recycled in forms of fertilizer and circular business models. This is my message here. I will stop here, but just let me assure you we will continue our efforts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And indeed, we will continue this discussion. I think it's a very, very active one. So now I see we are going towards the end of this panel discussion. It was quite intense, I have to say, and I see there are still a lot of questions pending in the Q&A box. So I encourage all the speakers also to address specifically those that are directly addressed to you. But now I would really like to give you each one final minute or two to express your final thoughts on this. And for example, if you had a magic wand, which would be the measures that you will put in place to solve this issue and better mobilize and promote this sector? So Barbara, I would like to go with you, your main takeaways, your 2 minutes on this.
Yeah, okay. So I would like to say that I'm very pleased to hear that agro residues such as straw, hay, reed and others are recognized these days as a value. Because when we were making our baby steps with straw in 2005, so over 15 years ago, hardly any believed it could be a future and that it could be a value. So luckily the time has changed and now we observe increasing interest. So as one of these is the proof that our presence is here, what we are talking about. And this is really a great thing. I'm also very happy that there is a Green Deal in Europe, and I hope that this project will develop as well as the 17 sustainable goals, so we can also meet and find our presence there. Finally, I would like to tell you that we invite everyone who would like to see how we have organized this process in our facilities, in our straw valley, as we call it, to have a look at the straw briquettes production and to get inspired to see how we use solar panels and electricity as a source of energy. All of that is available, I would say, all over the year, but especially we invite everyone to Open Day, which will be held in September within European Sustainable Development Week on 20th of September, if my memory is right. And I believe that each of us can do something to protect the climate, and that little steps matter, because together they can really, really give a great value and great action.
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you for your main takeaway. Michael, your 2 minutes time.
Yes, thank you. Well, I found it a very interesting discussion. For me, the main takeaways is that we really have to continue with our funding, whether basic research or really demonstration projects, which can support the realization of well-working business opportunities in which value can be generated from underutilized resources and which help to protect the environment and climate at the same time. So for us, of crucial importance is to mention that farmers need a supporting environment in which they can really bring in their own practical knowledge and skills, and that they are involved in those business models, and that they are adapted also to their specific needs. And here I want to just to say that really the EIP AGRI will continue to encourage increased investments in research and innovation and enable farmers and rural communities also to really benefit from it. And in addition, the new CAP will enable tailored advisory services and also the development of better functioning agricultural knowledge and innovation systems to foster knowledge exchange and also innovation in agriculture in the rural areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael, for raising this very important point, and indeed the fact that farmers need to be at center of this transition and should also benefit from the added value of better mobilization of agricultural residues. So it's really a mutual situation. But now going on to Danielle. Danielle, if you had the magic wand, what would be your 2 main requests or main takeaways from this discussion today?
Well, I think it is important to increment the interest and the demand. And for that, we need the primary sector to be involved, fully involved, and take action. Also, I think the next months are really crucial for the mobilization of agro-residues. Eco schemes are going to be defined already in several countries, and it may tip the balance towards soil organic carbon increase or bioenergy, bioeconomy uses. The national climate integrated action plans also, they have been approved, but now the instruments will follow up. Rural development, bottom-up local strategies, will they consider bioeconomy, bioenergy as one of the priorities, or will they, let's say, neglect or not see? We have to make their, I think, information. And also the issues on air quality are something that biomass, and okay, not biomass, but fairly any energy or any industry or any society action or activity should respect. Then I think with an action would be to make policymakers and society to easily understand this, and also about the balance between bioeconomy, bioenergy, or the use of agro-residues for soil improvement, to understand there is a balance, not a default solution. I think we need a public debate to communicate so that we can trigger, so that in Europe we can trigger informed decisions that just make happen whatever is really more interesting in terms of ecosystemic or societal uses. So I think that would be my key points.
Well, and indeed, I mean, I guess we all agree here that indeed we need to put things in perspective and that we need to have a debate on this to make informed choices, as you said, because it really depends on the situation, it really depends on the feedstock available. And we saw today that it's very different from place to place and even in different conditions. So thank you, Danielle, that was a very relevant point. Diana, do you want to go ahead with your 2 minutes?
Thank you so much. I would like to just add synergy among actors in rural areas that is crucial, and also synergy in funding. With funding, sometimes we direct demand. One of the examples is building renewable. In this case, what schools will use, what kind of boilers they will use, only for pellets or for agro pellets and pellets. This is also crucial. If we have a market and possibility to put on the local in the local market, this is the key, I think, to unlock the potential of agro residues. And as I said, synergy. This would be my message because without that, without exchange of good practices, without exchange of knowledge, without exchange of information such as this event, it is not possible to go forward. Thank you.
Absolutely. I think you summarized quite well the event in one word, which is synergies and exchange as well. So thank you so much, Diana. That's also very valuable input. And thank you again for being here. I mean, for having this discussion. Jerome. Sorry, you're the last, but now the floor is yours. So please, you have the very last closing remarks for today's panel.
Okay, thank you. For key takeaways, especially for people who are not experts in these topics, what you need to remember is that the fuel supply, the processing industries, the logistics generally are in place in some countries and under development in some others, and need to be, of course, encouraged and helped. Specifically about COMPTE, we have existing system and field-proven system solutions to cope with agricultural residues to produce energy, and also the ability to innovate if needed. We have continuous R&D towards refining the technology to use residues since 2000, and we have developed a system based on that. Speaking about case studies and success stories, we are not only speaking about small units, but also large energy centers like some of them we have installed years ago, burning corn cups, 5 plants over 5 megawatts. Dust from malteries, we have 2 or 3 plants. Flak residues, we have several plants. Each of them are more than 7 megawatts. Vineyard pruning, distilleries, cocoa-husk residues, sugarcane residues, not only in Europe also. And major and local industrial or farmers having their own byproducts have, of course, been the early acceptors. But recently we have seen big players, ESCO companies like NG Veolia, which are also looking now on these topics. And all these clients have been trusting COMPTE for years now. And this is the best example to show the example and the potential we have presented today. Thank you.
Thank you for raising also the point of ESCOs, which were not really addressed in the discussion today, but I think it was a nice final touch maybe for the next event ahead. So now I would like, to thank you all again for the very interesting insights you gave us and for sharing your views on such a complex and interesting topics. But now, Manolis, I would like to give you the floor maybe to say a couple of final words about some of the things we already discussed and to close this very interesting event. Manolis, please.
We tried our best to answer the questions from the audience. I'm afraid still a few are unanswered. I would just like to comment on a couple of them that have to do with the technologies, because people are asking about anaerobic digestion, for example, or pyrolysis. We have not explicitly, I would say, said that, I think, in the meeting, but thermochemical conversion and combustion, I think, is the state-of-the-art technology for the type of agricultural residues we have been discussing. Anaerobic digestion is suitable for some of them, like straw, unsuitable for some others, at the moment at least, like prunings. But of course, it's not a competitive technology because I would say most of the time it uses totally different feedstocks. pyrolysis and especially char production. I think this is something very relevant for the future, but I'm not sure exactly at what stage the technology is at the moment and whether it can handle as wide an assortment of biomass residues as the standard combustion process. I try to summarize here some remarks, hopefully capturing the views of all the panelists. So even if you can move on to the next slide, please. So I have 2 slides here to wrap up the event. The first is what needs to be done, some key messages. And I think everybody agreed on the financial support, but before financial support comes a policy framework that enables it. And I think it's quite clear that we do need that if we want to see more agrobiomass to be used for energy or otherwise. And I think there is a very big opportunity as well as a potential risk with the eco schemes and the cap revision, because basically what we would like to see is that eco schemes should enable the use of agrobiomass for the bioeconomy. If it's only for, let's say, leaving it on the soil and leaving it there to rot, for example, then everybody will go for the option that will give them payments. The second thing is that we need, well, I say new business models, but some of them are actually quite old and well known in the agricultural sector. We need cooperation between the actors. We need cooperative schemes, collaborative schemes. And now I think in many countries in Europe, we see more and more the concept of energy communities coming up. And for sure, I think this is a suitable vehicle that can be tailored for the agrobiomass sector. And I think that as events like today demonstrate, we should always intensify our efforts when it comes to awareness raising and make sure that people know about these possibilities and how they can make this a reality. I have singled out here 3 groups of actors: farmers, policymakers, and regional developers, which I think are very, very critical for a new agrobiomass value chain to take off. I guess that to some extent, researchers and associations, especially energy ones, do know that it is possible. I haven't written anything because I didn't want to be seen as a kind of promotion of what we are working on as researchers, any technological issues, but for sure, even though the technology is mature, technology improvements can always happen, and the more the sector advances, I think the more improved performance we will see. And what can we offer? And that will bring me to the final slide. What can utilization of agrobiomass can offer to Europe in general, to the member states, to rural communities? First of all, we have not the promise, but the real possibility of having low-cost competitive decarbonization through fossil fuels phase-out, if we are talking about energy pathways. I think it has been made clear by all the panelists that we have real possibilities for rural development when we are implementing new value chains, new jobs, some of them skilled, some unskilled, but value that stays, I would say, on the countryside where it is generated. We obviously, I think, contribute to the whole buzzwords or principles of bioeconomy and the circular economy in Europe by taking up what nature offers us and putting it in good practice instead of fossil resources. And a final remark is a little let's call it European nationalistic, but it's the very simple principle that we are talking about European solutions. The technology is European, whether you talk about pelletizing, briquetting, combustion, energy conversion in general, tailored for European resources, things that we have available in the European countryside, and at the moment still we don't put them to the best practice. So I think that's all for today. I would like to thank again all the panelists, the keynote speakers, my co-moderator Irene for their views and contributions to that, and obviously all the attendants that joined for this interesting event. I would just like to say again that for those of you that are interested in agrobiomass in general, I would suggest that you follow first the AgroBioHeat project, and because we're quite active on social media, and you will see a lot of interesting news coming on our way. We have several events on the pipeline, including the second edition of a matchmaking event we organized back in February. It will take place in early November, and it's called Bringing Value to AgroBiomass. Stay tuned for more details. And if you have a more, I would say, business-related interest in the sector, I would also suggest to follow the activities of Bioenergy Europe through the working group AgroBiomass and Energy Crops, which is chaired by me and moderated at the moment by Irene. So that's all for now, and thank you again all for your contributions, for your attendance.
Thank you, Manolis, and thank you everybody for joining us today. Have a very nice day and weekend ahead, and hope to see you in the next event. Bye-bye.